oh, your daughter's a druggie, so that's why she died. My daughter was on a plant-based diet. She worked out every day at LA Fitness over there by Trumbull Mall. I ran with her. She was a star in the track team in high school. All these awards. She's in the paper. It was all the time. Right now, the only justice we probably will get is just by suing them. It's by what, I'm sorry? It's by suing them.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing super well. Thank you all so much for being here. Today, we're going to be talking about two people. 23-year-old Lauren Smith Fields and 53-year-old Brenda Lee Rawls died on the same day in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And the way the Bridgeport Police Department responded to their deaths was absolutely appalling. They failed to conduct thorough investigations and failed to notify the families of their loved ones' deaths. Had it not been for the relentless efforts of Lauren and Brenda's families, who fought tirelessly for answers, their cases would have been buried, ignored, and forgotten. The families had to push for investigations, demand forensic testing, and apply public pressure for law enforcement to even acknowledge them. This video has been highly requested, and I want to emphasize that I am not accusing anyone of anything. I'm simply sharing what has been shared online, what has been shared in interviews with detectives, family members, and friends, and what has been published in the news. All of the information in today's video has been compiled from these public resources. There is quite a bit of information to go through, but before we get into it, I do want to take a moment to give you an update on what is happening with Erik and Lyle Menendez. The last time that we spoke about them was about 4 months ago, and I know so many of you guys have been asking for any new movements in the case, so I am partnering with hashtag Justice for Erik and Lyle to give you guys some more information. Erik and Lyle Menendez have been serving life in prison without the possibility of parole for the past 35 years for the murder of their parents. During the trial, the brothers revealed that they had been sexually assaulted by their father for most of their lives. However, at the time, the public didn't believe them. It was hard for them to accept that boys could be the victims of sexual assault. As a result of this, the abuse was kept out of the courtroom, raising serious questions about the fairness of their trial and their sentence. Last year, their case got new attention from millions of people online and around the world due to a new documentary and TV series. This caught the attention of the former DA, George Gascon, and he was planning to recommend to a judge that the brothers be resentenced, allowing for the possibility of parole. However, there is now a new DA, Nathan Hochman, who has indicated that he does not share the same perspective as the former DA. Erik and Lyle's resentencing hearing is set for March 20th and 21st, and of course, DA Hochman's recommendation carries a lot of weight. The goal for the hashtag Justice for Erik and Lyle campaign is to ensure that DA Hochman focuses on the facts of the case like he promised, and that he gives the brothers a fair chance at justice. To learn more about the campaign and to sign the petition, go to justiceforerikandlyle.org. With that, let's jump right into today's video. Lauren Smith Fields was born on January 23, 1998 to her mother Chantel Fields and to her father Everett Smith in Bridgeport, Connecticut. As the only daughter among 3 brothers, Lauren was very special. Her brothers had an incredibly soft spot in their hearts for her, and they say that they laughed a lot, they were always joking, and just having fun together always. Her brother Tavar said, quote, "She was multifaceted for sure. Very funny, gave great advice. Even though she was my little sister, we could always go to her and talk and vent, and she would always give us great feedback. She would light up any room. Any room that she was in, she always shined." Lauren's mother, Chantel, also had a wonderful relationship with her. They would go on mom and daughter dates and get their nails done, go out to restaurants, or just hang out inside, talking and enjoying each other's company. Chantel says Lauren was so sweet and funny, and something that she is really grateful for and proud of is Lauren's heart. Since Chantel often worked late, Lauren would tell her mom like, "Hey, I'll do your laundry tonight, don't worry about it," or tell her that she would cook dinner for the night, or would just help out in whatever way she could to lighten her mother's workload. Lauren's father, Everett, says that she was incredibly special to him as well, and Chantel says that Lauren was always daddy's little girl. From everything her family has shared, it's heartwarming hearing how family-oriented Lauren was and how she was so loved by them. Apart from enjoying time with her family, Lauren was also incredibly good at track during her time in high school, winning numerous awards, and then she went on to study physical therapy at Norwalk College. She was also trying to work with her passions, so she really loved makeup. You know, she's like a makeup girly. She loved clothes and just like all things beauty, so she started a YouTube channel.
Welcome back to my channel, and I'm gonna be doing I'm gonna install this wig. So
She also became certified in brow laminations, microblading, brow tinting, and threading, and she offered her beauty services via her Instagram. Lauren also loved just like getting matcha, getting coffee, working out, and she actually ate a plant-based diet. And in any free time that she had left over, she loved to travel. On social media, Lauren would share photos and videos from her travels to different destinations, including London, Jamaica, Rome, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. And she also had plans to travel to Greece for her 24th birthday, but unfortunately, she never got the chance to go. On Monday, December 13th, 2021, Chantel was unable to get in touch with her daughter. She wasn't answering her calls or text messages, so she was getting worried. As we know, Lauren was very family-oriented, and this wasn't like her to just not pick up the phone or respond to any messages. At around 8 p.m., Chantel decided to just go straight to Lauren's apartment that evening with Lauren's brother, Lakeem, to see what was going on. But they were only met with a note taped to Lauren's apartment door that read, quote, "If you're looking for Lauren, call this number." And when Chantel called, Lauren's landlord, who lived on the second floor named Hector, went down to meet them. He broke the devastating news to her. He told her that Lauren was gone, that she was found dead the day before. Chantel didn't know what to think. I mean, so many scenarios and questions were racing through her mind. She said, quote, "I started panicking. All I could do was just stand there like if I was frozen. I could not believe what he was telling me, that my baby was gone." Chantel didn't see any crime scene tape or like any police officers or anything. It was all just so confusing. Why didn't the police contact her if they found her daughter deceased the day before? Why wasn't the apartment being treated like a crime scene? I mean, this just all didn't make sense. Lauren's landlord put them in touch with the detective handling the case, Detective Kevin Cronin. So Lakeem called him and he said that Detective Cronin was just so indifferent to the situation, with no sort of soft approach or anything, and with a condescending tone, he told Lakeem that Lauren was deceased and that her body had already been removed from her apartment. He only briefly explained that Lauren had met a man, 37-year-old Matthew Thomas LaFountain, on Bumble, and that during Matthew's visit to her home, she suddenly became ill, and that according to Matthew's version of events, she began vomiting at one point in the night but was later fine, and that he checked on her twice when they were sleeping, once at 3 o'clock in the morning and again at 6:30 a.m., which is when he found Lauren bleeding from her nose and from her mouth. That was it. No further elaboration or anything like that was given to the family. Lakeem was hearing all of this and it just made no sense to him. I mean, who was Matthew? Who was this Bumble date? Where was he now? And why didn't Matthew contact the family to let them know, hey, your loved one passed away yesterday? This stranger was the last person with his sister and he was nowhere to be found. Lakeem asked if all of this was being investigated, but Detective Cronin told him that there was basically nothing to investigate since Matthew seemed like a, quote, really great guy, and that he was there himself when the medical examiner said that there were no signs of foul play and that both of them were fully dressed. He added that the responding officer said Matthew appeared visibly shaking and was trembling, as if that cleared Matthew from any sort of involvement. Detective Kevin Cronin told Lakeem that he would drive over there to further speak with him and with Chantel, but after waiting for more than 45 minutes and calling back and just not getting any response, Detective Cronin just never showed up. The family also wasn't able to get in touch with anyone from the Bridgeport Police Department, so they had no choice but to leave the apartment. Later, Everett tried reaching Detective Cronin as well. However, when he picked up, he told Everett to speak with Chantel instead and that she would tell him what happened. Everett was like, "No, I don't want to speak to my ex-wife. Like, I don't want to speak to her. I want to speak with you. You're literally the detective." And he wanted to ask him questions, but Detective Cronin said that he was off work and he just basically refused to continue the conversation. Later, Lakeem tried calling again, only for Detective Cronin to snap at him and say, quote, "Why do you keep calling me? I told you everything I know," before just hanging up on him. Like, what on earth? Like, how is a detective speaking that way to a family that just lost a loved one and is simply looking for answers? I can't imagine how Lauren's family must have felt just begging for any sort of response.
A whole day goes by, no police reach out to the family at all.
Her close-knit family says they went to the apartment the next day after frantically calling and texting Lauren and were referred to a Detective Cronin.
They didn't even contact us. They didn't let us know anything. It's like crazy. And I'm asking what's going on. He said she met some guy on Bumble. And I'm asking about the guy. He was like, "Oh, he sounds like a really nice guy. He sounds like a really good guy." And he was like, I'll call you back," and just hung up in my face.
The detective promised to come by the apartment.
Never showed up.
The family says the relationship relationship with police devolved from there. No contact from December 13th until December 29th.
Like, imagine not knowing what happened to your daughter. You show up to her apartment, you see this random note taped onto her door saying, if you're looking for Lauren, call this number. I mean, it genuinely sounds like the start of like a horror, like thriller movie. And then to call that number, find out it's the landlord who just tells you that your daughter's body was found the day before, and then the detective in charge of the case isn't even helping you. It's just absolutely terrible the way that everyone kind of just dismissed the family and made it feel like Lauren's death wasn't even worth looking into. Like, it didn't matter enough for an explanation. It's beyond infuriating, and it's heartbreaking to even imagine how her family must have felt being forced to beg for even the smallest bit of information, only to be treated with complete indifference. So on Wednesday, December 16th, Lauren's family went to the Bridgeport Police Department for answers. Chantel and Lakeem recalled being treated like suspects when they arrived at the police station. Instead of going into like a regular meeting room to discuss this, they were placed in a small interrogation room. When they walked in, the officers stopped what they were doing and just gave them like a hostile look. A different detective, non-detective Cronin, spoke with the family and explained what happened in detail. They were told that according to the police incident report, 3 days before Lauren's death, she met 37-year-old Matthew Thomas LaFountain from Milford, Connecticut on a dating app called Bumble. After meeting on Bumble, they found out that they shared a mutual friend on Instagram and they began to chat there. Before we continue, I just want to briefly speak about Matthew. I really wasn't able to find that much information on him. I mean, his life is kind of private, but reports say that he worked as a design engineer and a mechanical designer for manufacturing companies relating to things like heaters, cables for the military, and such. But other than that, there really isn't much that I could find about him. Going back to his statement, he said that Lauren invited him to her apartment on the evening of December 11th to eat, drink tequila, play some games, and watch a movie. Matthew said that Lauren had asked him for $40 to have her nails done and also asked him to bring a bottle of tequila. According to the incident report, Matthew said he arrived at around 9:30 p.m. with a 750 milliliter bottle of Casamigos tequila and thought that he had actually been stood up because Lauren wasn't responding. They didn't have each other's phone numbers, so the only way he was contacting her was through Instagram. So since she wasn't answering her Instagram, he just decided to leave the apartment. However, he returned shortly after when Lauren called him through Instagram, saying that she didn't answer the phone because she was doing her makeup. So he goes back to the building, goes up to her apartment, and he says at that point they just began drinking shots, but at one point, Lauren began vomiting in the bathroom. After that, they continued to drink more with like mixers, they watched movies, played games, and ate some food. He said later during the night, Lauren briefly stepped outside to meet with her brother, who he didn't like physically see. Like Lauren was just like, oh, I'll be right back, I'm gonna go meet with my brother. And when she returned from meeting with her brother outside, she went to the bathroom for like 10 to 15 minutes. He said that he thought that this was odd, but, quote, didn't feel it was his place to say anything as he didn't know her that well. He said that when she got out of the bathroom, they continued to watch the movie and drink some more tequila, and then Lauren fell asleep on the couch, so he carried her to her bedroom. He said he fell asleep beside her and woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to use the bathroom, and he saw Lauren sleeping and also heard her snoring. Then he went back to bed and woke back up at 6:30 in the morning, and that's when he saw her lying on her right side with blood coming out of her right nostril and realized that she wasn't breathing. He then says he called 911 right away and just was very shaken and just very scared. The 911 operator walked him through chest compressions, but when officers arrived at her apartment, it was too late. Lauren was gone. She was found lying on her back on the floor, and her time of death was 6:49 a.m., and she had been deceased for at least an hour or more. She had dried blood in and around her right nostril. Police collected her phone, her passport, a MasterCard with her name on it, her keys, and around $1,345 in cash that she had in her apartment before just locking everything up and leaving. And Matthew wasn't considered a person of interest. He wasn't further investigated, nothing. Police didn't take any other pieces of evidence from Lauren's house, and I don't know why, but they just never thought to inform her family of what had just happened. Matthew neither. As we know, Detective Cronin told the family that Matthew seemed like a nice guy, so he wasn't being looked into and basically went about his day after this. So now that Lauren's family heard this version of what happened, they still had even more questions. Lakeem said, quote, the landlord told us that he got a knock on the door at 5:30 a.m. and he didn't answer because it was too late. The 911 call was at 6:30 a.m., so who came and knocked on his door at 5:30? That was something the family just really wanted to be investigated. They were kind of thinking like, was at Matthew knocking on the landlord's door at 5:30 in the morning because he found Lauren's body and wanted to get some help. But then since the landlord didn't answer in time, he just went back upstairs and then changed his story to say that he found her at 6 o'clock in the morning instead. Or was it someone else knocking on the landlord's door, and why? Lauren's family also found things in her home that should have been taken the day that she was found, but weren't. Her family saw blood in the middle of her bed sheets. They found a pill, a half-full tube of lubricant on her dresser, a flipped-over plate of food, and they also found a condom with semen in the bathroom trash can. They didn't know where this came from or who it belonged to or why there was blood on her sheets. I mean, they just didn't know anything, and they didn't understand, like, why wouldn't police take this? I mean, there was literally blood on her blankets, and yet they were just there in her apartment as if it didn't mean anything. They had no idea why these items weren't taken, and of course, Detective Cronin wasn't showing up to speak with them or answer these questions. He was the one who was at the scene initially, so why wasn't he speaking to the family and providing them with these answers? The family was just understandably very angry. Lakeem said, quote, "To walk into your little sister's house and see the bloody sheets where she died at, and they didn't take this, collect this for evidence or nothing, that's heartbreaking."
The family says they provided evidence they'd collected to crime scene investigators who arrived for the first time that day, included a bloody sheet and a pill.
And 2 cups of like drinks or whatever next to a bottle. They didn't take none of that. We seen a condom, we seen lube, other stuff in there. They didn't take none of it.
A CSI team actually wasn't brought in until December 29th, only after the family demanded it. And once at Lauren's apartment, the investigator asked the family for DNA swabs in order to clear them. Chantel said that she remembers thinking, like, wait, shouldn't you be worried about the other people that were here that night? Like, why are you taking our DNA? Like, why are you acting as if we're the suspects? After that day, the police didn't submit any physical evidence for forensic analysis until January 5th, 2022. Since the family just had so many questions that weren't being answered, they decided to hire an attorney named Darnell Crossland to help them. They were also going to pay for a private autopsy. Darnell and Lauren's family wanted answers to a lot of things. For example, the incident report stated that Lauren was bleeding from her nose and from her mouth, yet there was a pool of blood in the middle of the bed with streaks going off to the side rather than near her pillow where she was lying. So what's the explanation for that? Another question, Detective Cronin claimed that Lauren and Matthew did not have intercourse solely based on Matthew's word, yet a used condom in Lauren's bathroom trash and an open, half-used tube of lubricant on her dresser said otherwise, and none of that was taken into consideration when speaking with Matthew. Another question, where was the body camera footage from the police officer that was first at the scene? Why wasn't the area taped off? Why was Detective Cronin being so dismissive to the family? And the biggest question is, why was the investigation basically closed just because Detective Cronin thought that Matthew was a nice guy? In an email to city leaders, Darnell wrote, quote, "We have questions for this detective, Captain Dillerin and Chief Garcia. My main question to all of you is, since when is an investigation based on someone being a good guy or good person? Or does Detective Cronin know Mr. LaFontaine, as he is a resident of Milford, which is only 6 to 10 miles away from Bridgeport? In police force, are investigations initiated based on personal belief of someone's character or evidence provided?" In regards to the portion of the email where Darnell implies a personal connection between Matthew and Detective Cronin, he said, quote, "We've been finding out on social media that LaFontaine, the individual who was with Lauren, has a huge connection with the police department, and his family does as well, which could explain a lot of things, and of course this needed to be looked further at. From the beginning, everything in the way the police handled the case was just wrong. There was no closing off Lauren's apartment, no photographs taken, no forensic evidence taken, no questioning, nothing. It was unbelievable." Darnell said that criminal experts who have examined the case say that it needed to be treated as a homicide first and then ruled out if the evidence supported it, and that the last person to have seen Lauren should have been treated as a person of interest from the very start. But again, the Bridgeport Police Department didn't do that. No sort of investigation was done. Closing the email to the city leaders, Darnell wrote, quote, "If for any reason this continues to drag on and any of Mr. LaFontaine's statements are proven to be false, uncorroborated, and complete lies through an independent investigation, we will not rest until everyone is held accountable for their actions." So Lauren's family was going to do their own investigation, and they decided to create a GoFundMe, which I will link down below, and of course will make a donation to. Lauren's family needed this money to continue paying for a private attorney for the private autopsy, to continue to print out flyers and just get the word out about what happened to Lauren. Lauren's family began spreading the word of the treatment that they were receiving from the Bridgeport Police Department about Lauren's death, and word spread very fast on social media. Hashtag Justice for Lauren was being spread, and so many people were speaking out about it, so many celebrities. I mean, even Cardi B posted about it. I remember seeing this all over the news and all over social media, and I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, how are police just treating the family so badly, and how are they not investigating this further? In Cardi B's post, she said that Connecticut had failed Lauren. TikToks were also being made, and friends were sharing photos and videos of Lauren's bubbly personality and just making so many videos in her memory. One of Lauren's friends, Veronica, says that Lauren always made people feel welcomed and seen. She said Lauren was getting more in tune with her spirituality, and to Veronica, that helps her feel at peace, knowing that her soul is okay because while she was here, she was trying her best to just be the best version of herself. She said Lauren was not one to do any sort of drugs, including marijuana, and that she was simply, quote, high on life alone. Now, Bumble did end up releasing a statement in which they said that they empathize with Lauren's family, friends, and the community, and said that her death deserves a proper investigation and that they currently are supporting the ongoing investigation. Lauren's family had to lay her to rest, and just being so close to the holidays, it was just really hard and just really devastating. And although there was a tremendous amount of support from people online, there was also unfortunately criticism and speculation being spread. I won't go into detail regarding this criticism and just like the hateful things that were spread about Lauren, about her family, and about the situation. I just feel like there's no need for me to like mention them. I think it is hurtful for a family to already be dealing with the loss of their loved one. Then on top of that, to also have to deal with so much hatred, it's really sad. On January 23rd, 2022, on what would have been Lauren's 24th birthday, her family and members of the community marched, demanding that her death be looked into properly. There was a cake and everyone saying happy birthday to her, and they also released pink and red balloons into the sky. Lauren's father said that they kept getting doors closed in their faces and that it just wasn't fair. The community was really upset at not only Lauren's death and the way her family was being treated, but also because 53-year-old Brenda Rawls, born on December 2nd, 1968, had died that very same day in the same city. Her family was also being vocal about the police's mishandling of her case. According to Brenda's sister, Dorothy, Brenda went to visit a male acquaintance, like someone she used to be close with / kind of dated before, on December 11th, and then didn't respond to calls for 2 days. Dorothy says that she and her sisters were very close and that they called and texted each other so frequently, so it was very worrying that 2 days had gone by and they had no word from her. So her family searched for answers themselves, and they went to this male's house directly. This man claimed that he couldn't wake Brenda up and that she had died and was taken away. He gave her family the clothes that she was wearing, which the family didn't understand why it was left behind, and Brenda's sister called hospitals and a funeral home asking if her sister's body was there. But they were advised to contact the state medical examiner's office, and when they did, only then did they get an actual notification of their sister's death. Another of Brenda's sisters, Deirdre, said the only information they had about their sister's death was who she was last with and that that person just couldn't wake her up. That was it. I can't imagine how frustrating that must have been. Like, I just am very confused by these people who don't notify family immediately once someone from their family passes away. If one of my family members passed in this manner, I would be furious and of course just ask so many questions. Brenda's sisters were just appalled that they were never notified by the police. I mean, if they hadn't gone to this male's house to look for their sister Brenda, would they have ever been notified, or would it have been months later when they were finally notified? Police never searched the scene, they never made an incident report, they didn't contact the family, didn't question the man that she was last with, nothing. And when one of Brenda's sisters asked about the investigation, a sergeant admitted that officers had, quote, dropped the ball. Despite being given a detective's contact, which was Detective Angel Llanos, her family never got a response from him even after calling numerous times. Dorothy said, quote, it's almost like they're not aware of her death or they just don't care, and that made us angry. She was raised and born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, paid her taxes, voted, and they treated her like she was nothing. like she was roadkill. 2 weeks after her death, her family held a Christmas Day vigil in memory of Brenda's life. Her family says that she loved to make jokes and laugh and would make any bad situation into a funny one. She enjoyed spending time with her sisters Dorothy, Angela, and Deirdre, and she attended church regularly and volunteered to help with the homeless as well as working her full-time job in customer service. She was active in community service, yet the authorities of her community weren't giving her a proper investigation. It wasn't until February of 2022 that her family learned of Brenda's cause of death from the medical examiner, which was cardiovascular disease with diabetes as a contributing cause. But Brenda's family says that they didn't really understand this. They say that she was healthy and lived a normal and responsible life. Darnell Crossland, also the Rawls family attorney, said, quote, "While we did not have a physical copy of the ME report, we were told it concludes that the cause of death was cardiac arrest. We know that there are many causes of cardiac arrest, and the conditions attendant to Brenda Lee Rawls and the unnamed man that she was with has not been investigated, thus leaving this family with more questions than answers." And like Lauren, Brenda's death wasn't being shown in the media. The slow police response and delayed media coverage really reignited discussions about, quote, missing white woman syndrome. This is a term describing the lack of media attention between missing white women and missing black women. Assistant professional of criminal justice at Sacramento State University, Danielle Slackoff, said that while Gabby Petito's case, a 22-year-old white woman who went missing, received insanely massive coverage, Lauren's case, on the other hand, relied on her family and social media to keep it in the spotlight. They were forced to fight for justice and were not given space to even begin to grieve their loss. I was watching an interview with Gabby's father about this, and he says that at first, when he heard that people were saying that, his daughter's case was being pushed out more because she was white, he was taken aback by it, and he was a little bit upset because he was like, what does the color of her skin matter? Like, my daughter is missing and she deserves to be found and she deserves to be put out in the media, etc. However, once he took like a step back and just kind of cleared his mind, he was like, you know what, people are right. The stories that are being pushed out the most, like all of the people look the same, and that's just not okay. So he encourages people to just share any story that touches you, even if that person doesn't look like you or doesn't look like everyone else. Like, just continue to share everybody's story, because it's not right that so many people go missing every single day and that certain people's stories aren't pushed out because of their skin color or because of the way that they look. So yeah, I just quickly wanted to mention to you guys what Gabby's father thinks about that statement. And I think it's understandable that maybe he was a little bit taken back by it when he first heard that, but then was able to reflect on that and accept and acknowledge that this is a reality. Now, going back to Lauren, her family learned of her autopsy findings on January 24th, 2022. The medical examiner said that her death was an accidental overdose caused by an acute intoxication due to the combined effects of fentanyl, promethazine, hydroxine, and alcohol. These substances can cause sedation and are very dangerous if mixed together. Lauren's family was hearing all of this and only had more unanswered questions. The lawyer, Darnell, believed that the language used in the autopsy was meant to kind of create some doubt about what actually happened, saying, quote, "If they can say accident and drugs, then they think that we'll just leave them alone." Lauren's brother, Lakeem, said that he did go over to her apartment that night before she passed away, and he says that she seemed perfectly fine, that she seemed like her usual self. According to Lauren's other brother, Tavar, Lakeem had gone over to pick up some clothes that got mixed in Lauren's shopping bags after their trip to the mall earlier that day. Lakeem said that she walked out to his car, they talked and laughed, and again, she seemed completely fine. Tavar said that they know their sister like the back of their own hand, so if Lakeem was saying that she seemed normal, like her usual self, it's because that's the truth. Lauren's family did not believe she was on drugs like the autopsy was stating. Like Lauren's friend Veronica said, they also added that she just didn't do drugs. Darnell added, quote, "I've never seen a medical examiner conclude a mix of drugs was an accident without knowing who provided the drugs or how it was ingested." Because fentanyl was present, the Bridgeport Police Department Narcotics and Vice Division was opening a criminal investigation into Lauren's death with assistance from the DEA. On January 30th, 2022, the Bridgeport mayor, Joseph Ganim, released a statement saying that he was extremely disappointed in the leadership of the police department. He stated that an internal affairs investigation was being conducted and that effective immediately, Detective Angel Llanos and Kevin Cronin, who were in charge of handling the death investigations of Brenda Rawls and Lauren, had been suspended and placed on administrative leave due to their mishandling of the cases and just lack of sensitivity. Joseph also said that the supervisory officer who was in charge of overseeing these matters actually retired from the Bridgeport Police Department that same week. It's so terrible that Lauren and Brenda's families went through the same treatment at the same time by the same police department. Darnell had not only spoken about possible connections between Detective Cronin and Matthew, like we had mentioned earlier, but between the acting police chief at the time and the head of internal affairs. Darnell said, quote, "The acting police chief was a longtime live-in girlfriend of the head of internal affairs. We have a lot to outline the incestuous, corrupt, and disorganized space here." Now, just a few days later, on February 3rd, 2022, the Bridgeport Police Union, representing Detective Kevin and Angel, insisted that the city was rushing to judgment without all of the facts and planned to file grievances to reinstate the officers, and they forwarded the matter to the American Arbitration Association. So the union president, Sergeant Brad Seeley, said, quote, "It's regrettable the city has chosen to blame the police. We caution against a rush to judgment until we have all the facts surrounding this case." The union expressed sympathy for the victims' families, but at the same time, we're also trying to focus on reversing the suspensions. So the family was like, how are you apologizing to us and saying that you feel sorry for us and that you offer your condolences for Lauren's death, yet you're trying to reinstate the officer who mishandled the case, was rude to us, disrespected us, and just didn't do their job. That same month, the Greater Bridgeport branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, aka the NAACP, called for a federal investigation into the Bridgeport Police Department for their long-standing patterns of racial discrimination. They cited past cases of racism, including a former senior officer's lawsuit against the department and lawsuits from 2 Black police captains. The department also had dealt with a lot of corruption. So in April of 2021, former police chief Armando Perez was sentenced to a year and a day in prison for rigging the selection process to secure his position and later for lying to the FBI. Brenda's sister Dorothy said she thinks that the paid suspensions are just like a joke and that the Bridgeport Police Department should be rebuilt from the bottom up. As for Matthew, I mean, where was he this entire time? What was his perspective on this? Like, what was he saying? Well, he actually got an attorney and he wasn't making any public statements at all. His attorney, Peter, said that Matthew had been and continued being fully cooperative with police since the beginning and believes that social media has made him the main focus on the investigation when he isn't. He offered his and Matthew's condolences to Lauren's family and that was basically it. Lauren's family attorney, Darnell, was hearing this and said that if Matthew was truly being cooperative, he would have voluntarily offered DNA samples to compare to the condom and to other items in Lauren's apartment. He said, quote, "He said in the police report that he slept with his clothes on and that they didn't have sex. Take a look in the bathroom and you see a condom still had semen on it. It wasn't dried up, so this just doesn't add up." That was a question that a lot of people had, like, who did that condom belong to? City Council member Maria Pereira questioned whether the police would have handled the case differently if Lauren had been a white woman and that the last person that was with her was a 37-year-old Black man. If the roles were reversed, would this be treated the same way? Now, she said that she firmly believes that the response would not have been the same. In May that same year, Detective Angel Llanos was reinstated because apparently his actions were consistent with how he had handled similar cases in the past, and there was just no evidence of policy violations. As for Detective Kevin Cronin, the city decided not to pursue arbitration and reinstated him to full duty in late May. No details about the investigations or potential disciplinary actions were revealed, which of course came as a major disappointment for the community and of course for Lauren and Brenda's families. Brenda's sister Dorothy said that she didn't want Detective Angel Llanos necessarily fired, but hearing that he hasn't acted differently in other cases was very concerning. If you have a pattern of just quickly dismissing cases and just behaving this way, I mean, how many other cases have also been diminished because of his behavior? In the spring of 2022, local lawmakers voted unanimously on House Bill 5349, a bill that is meant to hold police accountable. It states that if someone dies, the family of the victim must be notified within 24 hours. Lauren's father, Everett, says that this law is basically just like common sense. Like, this is such a basic human concept that it shouldn't even be needed. It should just be done in the first place always. He said his daughter's death was just like swept underneath the rug, completely overlooked, and that he thinks it's disgusting. He knows that a bill won't solve everything, but it's a start. Now, again, you would think that it would be common sense to just notify the family within 24 hours, but with this new bill, hopefully it makes the concept of notifying victims' families as quickly as possible crystal clear. Lauren's and Brenda's families don't want any other family to go through what they went through. In June of 2022, Brenda's family held a vigil for her. They wanted to keep Brenda's name alive and just make sure that people didn't forget about her. Brenda's sister, Angela, told the media that it's just been really, really hard. She said, quote, "I love my sister, but I try not to think about her because when I do think about her, I can't control my tears and my emotions." In December 2023, Lauren and Brenda's families filed lawsuits, each seeking more than $30 million in damages from the city. Both lawsuits say that the victims were denied justice because of the color of their skin. Now, I'll read some parts from Chantel's lawsuit, which is to the city, law enforcement, and to Bumble. Some of the main parts in the lawsuit are, quote, "The Bridgeport police failed to perform a kit or even consider that she was drugged, raped, and/or killed by LaFontaine, the last person who saw her alive." Next, the police report makes no mention of whether he was asked if he killed her. They never arrested LaFontaine. They failed to conduct a meaningful interview of him. They failed to properly investigate him or of his suspicious story. They failed to consider or investigate any suspect in her death at all. Moreover, if the defendants properly surveyed the crime scene, they would have noticed several items needed to be collected for analysis, including, but not limited to, a bloody sheet, a used Trojan condom with semen in it, women's undergarments, a pill on the counter, glassware used that evening to consume alcohol or other liquids, food consumed that evening, the bottle of tequila that LaFontaine brought, vomit, and other biologicals. So those are just some key points from the lawsuit that they filed. In regards to Bumble, some points in the lawsuit read, quote, "Bumble markets itself as a safe and secure platform for women to connect and potentially find friends and romantic partners. Bumble has failed to uphold its duty of care to its users. In 2021, Bumble did not run background checks on its users. In 2021, Bumble did not have meaningful policies and procedures in place that could even verify if the user was who they said they were. Simply put, Bumble did nothing to keep users like Lauren safe from potentially dangerous individuals or situations that might arise from using their dating app, and breached the duty of care it owed to Lauren." In Brenda's lawsuit, some important points are, quote, "Brenda was found dead a couple of houses down from her own home in December. She was found dead after meeting up with a man that resided there. They never arrested this individual. They failed to conduct a meaningful interview with this individual, and they failed to properly investigate him or of his suspicious story. They failed to consider or investigate any suspect at all in her death. They failed to investigate at all. They failed to properly survey the crime scene. They failed to investigate or survey Brenda's own home. If they had, they should have noticed that there was blood on her front screen door." The lawyer for both Brenda and Lauren's family acknowledged that no amount of money could ever truly make up for the family's loss, but urged the city of Bridgeport to take responsibility and provide fair compensation for everything that they had put the families through and just their mishandling of the cases. Both Brenda's and Lauren's family believed that the police expected no one to follow up with their loved ones' deaths. They believed that the police were thinking like, oh, like no one's gonna come looking for answers, like no one cares about them, the family doesn't care enough, like it's fine, like let's just close the case, which to them is just so like discriminating and inhumane, and both families want the public and the police to know that they were wrong, that both women who died have families behind them who love them and just won't stop fighting until they get answers from the police department that's literally there to service the community, which includes them. They said it's sad that they have to sue the city, but in the end, they feel like this is the only type of justice that they will end up getting. I'll end today's video with some statements that the families have made. Dorothy, Brenda's sister, said, quote, "I just want to say to family members who ever go through this, if this happens to you, do not go away. Do not give up, because I really truly believe that it is exactly what they expect you to do. To walk away, to not fight. You have to fight for your family members' rights." And Lakeem, Lauren's brother, said, quote, "The general public can support us by continuing to share Lauren's story, continuing to shout her name, continuing to hashtag justice for Lauren, continuing to show us support, and just stay up on her story." Chantel said that being Lauren's mom was the happiest time in her life, and she is hurting so much knowing that she will never see her daughter again, never touch her again, but she knows that she will be in her heart forever, and she will continue searching for answers for her beautiful daughter and just make sure that people who mishandled her case are held responsible. Brenda's sister Dorothy says she wants to continue to fight for accountability and just help people moving forward. She is a psychiatric mental nurse practitioner, and in January of 2023, she actually opened her private practice in honor of her sister named, quote, "My sister's keeper," and she just wants to help as much people as she can. Both Lauren and Brenda's cases should have been properly investigated from the very beginning, and I admire them so much for not giving up and just showing so much incredible strength. No family should have to beg for answers. They shouldn't feel dismissed. I hope they find answers and justice for their loved ones, and I just hope that Lauren and Brenda are resting peacefully. My best wishes go out to the family, and it's just so important to continue to share their stories and just make sure that they're not forgotten. It's sad that years have passed and the families are still just working at this. They're still asking questions. They're still pushing out their stories and just are not receiving the answers that they need. Lauren and Brenda just deserved so much more. So I just really want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to what happened to both Lauren and Brenda and for helping me keep their names alive. I will link some resources down below to where you can learn and just read more about their cases and how you can continue to help and just show support for their families. I would love to know what you guys think about this down below, and if there are any updates, I will definitely make a part 2 or let you guys know by putting a pinned comment down below. That is pretty much everything I have for today's video. If you guys are not subscribed yet, I would really appreciate it if you guys could subscribe and join the familia. If you guys ever want summaries or just like shorter versions of my videos, you guys can always check out my TikTok and Instagram, which are at True Crime Jackie and are linked down below. Thank you again so much for being here. I wish that this video had a different ending. I wish that there was justice for Brenda and for Lauren. Unfortunately, that is not the case, and like I said, all we can continue to do is just share their stories, share their names, and just keep the word out there. With that, I will see you all in the next video. Bye, familia.